This is Story Recapped. Today, I'm going to explain a comedy, romance, and sci-fi film called Multiplicity. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. When Doug Kinney drives to the location of his project, he finds that his team has already started building the driveway, but did it at the wrong house. Vic points the blame at the workers and insists that he can't pay for the damages to the wrong house. Doug gets frustrated and plans to work on both driveways to avoid a lawsuit. Doug heads back to the office and tries to deal with the problems. His boss, Dell King, finds out about the mistake and announces that the owner of the wrong driveway has threatened to sue. Doug assures him that he'll take care of it, but Dell points out that Doug has another unfinished job. His coworker, Ted, suggests working on the weekend, which Doug doesn't like. That evening, Doug arrives home and finds his wife, Laura, and their son, Zach, playing cards. Laura mentions that their water heater is broken, but Doug hasn't had the time to fix it. She then scolds him for not attending their daughter's graduation at Campfire Girls. Doug apologizes, but he excuses that he had to work late since his boss recently fired someone and he had to replace him. Laura thinks it's a promotion, but Doug admits that he'll do both his old job and the new job without getting a raise. Laura tells him to refuse the job since he barely has any time for his family, but Doug will get fired if he does. The following day, Laura announces that she was offered her old job back, but Doug doesn't think that it's worth it since they'll both be unavailable for their kids. Laura tries to convince him to help out more with the kids, but he doesn't have time. Laura laments that she'll never get back to work, which angers Doug. He apologizes when he sees her crying and tries to comfort her, but it doesn't work. Doug heads to the research facility he's building in Malibu and tries to juggle multiple problems. When a water pipe breaks, Doug tries to fix it on his own, but damages it further. This pushes Doug to throw a tantrum, catching the attention of Dr. Leeds. Later, Leeds talks to Doug about how busy his life has been. Leeds offers to change his life so he doesn't have to be stuck at work all the time. Curious, Doug shares his trouble with Leeds while in his office. He regrets not spending time with his family, but he also wants some time for himself. Leeds offers to solve his problem and reveals that he creates clones. Thinking he's joking, Doug gets up to leave. Leeds clarifies that he's a geneticist who started cloning viruses, insects, and animals. Just the previous year, he was able to clone himself. Suddenly, another Leeds walks in and shakes Doug's hand. Doug prepares for the procedure and notices Leeds' assistant was also cloned. Doug gets nervous of any complications, so Leeds injects him with a sedative. When he's unconscious, the scientist clones his mind and body. Hours later, Doug wakes up to Leeds checking his vitals. Leeds then introduces him to his clone, but they're confused about which one of them is the clone and which one is the real one. Finally, Leeds shows that Doug has a number 2 on the back of his ear, making it clear that he's the clone, while the other is the original Doug. 2 remembers everything until the cloning, which made him think that he was the real one. That afternoon, Doug drives back home with 2. He plans to have 2 live in the guest house, which is filled with junk. Doug promises to clean everything to make it a comfortable living space. The 2 then agree on getting things done, including bringing down their rival, Ted. Laura and the kids arrive and the 2 nearly get caught. Doug heads out and catches their daughter, Jennifer, in his arms. He then compliments his wife and promises to spend time with the kids. The next day, 2 is already at work and gets things done before his coworkers and boss arrive. This leaves Ted dumbfounded and Dell impressed. Suddenly, Doug walks in, but the secretary notes that she saw him already going to the meeting with Dell. Doug stops and realizes that his clone is already there. Doug excuses that he went back to his truck after spilling coffee on his shirt. After leaving, Doug calls his office to talk to 2, who explains that he thought that the point was for him to work so that Doug can spend time with his family. 2 assures him that he's already checked on all of their projects, leaving Doug with nothing to do. While he's leaving to visit a site, Ted calls out 2 and accuses him of fooling everyone with his go-to attitude. Ted then goes into a porta potty, so 2 traps him in and calls a lift to transport the porta potty with Ted inside. At Zach's football game, Zach is happy to see his father watching. Some parents argue with the coach when their kid gets benched. This drives the coach to the edge, so Doug steps in and comforts him while offering advice on coordinating the kids. When the coach realizes that he's Zach's parent, the coach thinks Doug is just trying to get his kid in the spotlight, so he quits. When Laura gets home with Jennifer, she's surprised to see Doug cooking dinner. Zach announces that Doug is the new football coach and helped his team win. When the kids leave to wash up, Laura accuses Doug of getting fired, hence why he has extra time. Instead, he claims that he threatened to quit, so Dell hired someone to assist him. Doug then encourages Laura to get her job back, which excites her. The next day, Vic is late to arrive at their construction site, so 2 fires him and drags him back to his truck when he refuses to leave. While working, Laura calls 2 to ask him to pick up the kids from school and take Jennifer to ballet class for picture taking. Doug is playing golf when 2 calls him to do the task. When he gets the kids at home, Doug struggles to get Jennifer prepared for ballet and messes up her dress and hair. He then drags the kids to ballet class, only to learn that the picture was rescheduled the next day. Pissed, Doug nearly threatens the receptionist to get the photographer to continue the picture. That evening, Doug juggles the household duties while the children start fighting. He yells at them and scares them into getting into bed. After a month, Doug takes Laura to a fancy restaurant, but the host stares at Doug oddly. Doug then brings up not having time for work and himself since he has his hands full with the children and the chores. When Laura points out that she's been doing the same thing for years, Doug explains that she does it better because she's a mother. He asks Laura to help out more in the house, but Laura refuses since she loves her job and is due for a promotion. When Doug tries to argue, Laura gets angry. At a nearby table, 2 is on a date with his coworker, Noreen. He claims that his wife is cheating on him, getting sympathy from his date. When they get up to leave, Doug and 2 notice each other, so 2 quickly hides behind the table. 2 sits with his back to Doug, while Doug hides behind the menu. 2 then heads to the men's room, so Doug follows him to scold him. 2 claims that he's there on business with Noreen, but Doug doesn't buy it. Doug then proposes that they switch so 2 can spend some time with Laura and the kids while helping around the house. 2 laughs it off since Doug wouldn't know the progress that he's been working on for the last month. 2 then scolds him for taking away his family and friends, so all he had was the job. Suddenly, the host walks in, so Doug dumps 2's face in the sink. Once the coast is clear, Doug tells 2 to slip out with Noreen while he distracts Laura. However, when Doug comes out, Noreen finds him. Noreen spots Laura from a distance, so they both sit with other people to hide. 2 comes out and Laura spots him, so he pretends to be Doug. 2 kisses Laura, giving Doug and Noreen a chance to leave. One night, Doug walks into the guest house while 2 watches football. He then introduces 3, revealing that he just cloned himself again. 2 gets pissed, but Doug explains that 3 will help with the kids and the chores while also being 2's friend and roommate. 2 still doesn't think it's a good idea, but gives up on arguing. With 2 clones doing his work, Doug finally spends time leisurely. 3 enjoys breakfast with the family and assures Laura that she can keep her job. Later, 3 bakes in the kitchen while Doug is watching a basketball game. That evening, Doug sneaks back home late at night and slips into bed with Laura, only to realize that 3 is there too. They accidentally wake up Laura, so Doug drops from the bed to hide while 3 excuses that he had a nightmare. Later, Doug pushes 3 into the guest house and scolds him for sleeping next to Laura. He then accuses 3 of getting intimate with Laura, but 3 assures him that nothing happened. Because of this, Doug stresses that neither clone can sleep with his wife. One day, Doug goes sailing but doesn't enjoy it. He shares that he wants to learn how to sail to the boat rental owner, Walt. One night, Doug wakes up to music playing in the guest house. He investigates and finds 2 and 3 dancing with women. The women think that they're triplets and get interested in Doug. Doug, however, urges them to leave, much to the women's dismay. Once they're out, Doug scolds 2 for bringing women into the house. 2 then reveals that he's smoking, starting an argument between him and Doug. 3 calms Doug down and offers him a Tylenol from the kitchen. Doug comes across another clone on the way to the kitchen, much to his surprise. Finally, he meets 4. Who acts childish. 2 and 3 explain that they made another clone to help out around the guest house, but he didn't turn out as intelligent since 4 is a clone of another clone. Doug scolds them, so he stresses that they shouldn't make more clones. The next day, Walt checks in on Doug after he finishes his sailing lesson. Walt offers Doug to take the boat out with his wife for a private, romantic date. Meanwhile, 3 teaches Laura how to properly foil leftovers, which makes her curious about his change in persona. Doug then switches places with 3 while Laura isn't looking, making her confused. That evening, Laura brings up the discussion they had before, not knowing that she discussed it with 3 instead. Doug pretends to know about it and just lets her make the final decision to get out of the topic. Laura reveals that the topic was taking the kids to Disney World on Christmas, since she already bought non-refundable tickets. Doug doesn't think it's a good idea, but Laura points out that he agreed to it. Pissed, Laura rants that Doug hasn't been consistent with her. She accuses him of having mental issues, so he changes the topic and invites her to go sailing. Laura points out that they have too much to do and storms off when he can't make the final decision on their plans. Doug heads to the guest house to announce that he'll be going away for a few days, so he assigns 3 to be him for the next few days. He instructs 3 to pretend to be sick and avoid getting close to Laura. 2 offers to help out, but Doug doesn't trust him with Laura. That morning, Doug heads to the harbor to start sailing. He ends up having a horrible time as he spends most of it feeling seasick. Later that night, 3 reads a book when Laura puts on a nightdress and seduces him. 3 pretends to be sick, but this doesn't stop Laura. 3 tries to refuse, but still ends up getting intimate with Laura. Afterward, Laura leaves to grab a snack. Meanwhile, 2 searches for something to eat, but 4 has eaten everything in the guest house. 2 sneaks into the main house to grab a meal, but walks in on Laura eating in the kitchen. Still feeling amorous, Laura seduces him, and 2 tries to resist, but also ends up getting intimate with Laura on the couch. Moments later, a storm starts and scares 4. Laura heads up but asks 2 to close the car windows to prevent the interior from getting soaked in the rain. Meanwhile, 4 heads inside the house. Laura finds him and assumes Doug got drenched because she sent him to close the car. She changes his clothes in the bathroom while 3 hides in the shower. Seeing him get aroused, Laura takes 4 to bed for another round of intimacy. At the harbor, Doug admits that while he was getting sick in the boat, he realized that he missed his old life. The next day, 2 gets sick, so 3 calls Del to excuse him from work. However, Del points out that they can't get the building inspected for another month if he doesn't come in. Del threatens to fire him, so 3 goes instead. Since 3 knows nothing about the project, he calls 2 to answer the inspector's questions. The inspector isn't impressed, so he puts the project on hold for 3 weeks. This leads to Del firing 3. After learning that he got fired, 2 heads to the house to look for medicine in the kitchen. Laura finds him and is confused since he was supposed to be at work. 2 gets pissed and insults Laura, leading to her slapping him. Later, Laura finds 4 in the garage and confronts him about what she believes is Doug's recent actions. She rants that Doug isn't taking their problems seriously, so nothing gets fixed. Laura then questions if Doug still even loves her. 4, however, doesn't understand and simply asks for pizza. Soon, Doug arrives home but finds all 3 clones sitting in the living room. They reveal that Laura left and took the kids. 2 confesses that he got into a fight with Laura because he was pissed at getting fired. 2 directs the blame on 3 for not answering the inspector's questions. Just as Doug is at the breaking point, 3 confesses that all of them slept with Laura. With his life ruined, Doug is at a loss on what to do. While trying to figure out why Laura left him, 4 shares that Laura mentioned that Doug never fixed their problems. Doug finds out that Laura is sad and scared, so he gets an idea. Doug buys sports shirts for him and the clones, and they work together to fix the house. He hires Vic to help, who doesn't question how there are 4 Dougs working together. While having a snack with 3, Doug asks him if Laura seemed to prefer 3 over him. 3 assures Doug that Laura loves him, but Doug realizes that he was never there for her and the kids. 3 encourages him that any time with his family, even the bad days, is quality time. One day, Laura and the kids find Doug waiting for them outside her parents' home. The kids are excited to see him, but Laura tells him to go back inside so that they can talk privately. Doug begs her to come home, but Laura points out that he's been acting like a lunatic lately. Doug admits that he got confused about who he was and relates this to how Laura wants to be independent while also being cared for. Seeing him understand her perspective, Laura agrees to check the house with him. Laura is stunned to see that the house is finally fixed. 3 and 2 see that Laura is happy and celebrates their victory quietly. Doug then suggests that he start his own contracting business so he has control of his time, which Laura tearfully agrees to. Doug professes his love for her and promises that they'll be fine as long as they're together. Days after putting his life back together, Doug sees his family off to school and work. Right after, the 3 clones drive out in Doug's old car. The clones hit the road and figure out their lives on their own. Doug worries about them, but they assure them that they'll be fine. Instead, they worry about him, but Doug is sure that he'll be okay from now on. After saying their goodbyes, the trio drives off. The clones end up stopping on the road next to Laura's car, and she spots the 3 dogs and gets confused, but she concludes that she's just reminding herself of her husband because she loves him so much. After some time, 3 writes to Doug that they've opened a successful pizza restaurant in Miami. 2 is happy to meet people vacationing there, while 3 loves being the chef. Meanwhile, 4 delivers the newspapers and pizzas, which he sometimes mixes up.
This is all for Story Recap for today. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Tell us in the comments if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Watch other of our videos showing on the screen and leave a like because it helps the channel. And I would see you in the next video. Goodbye.